continues to be the big story and extend higher, but with a cautionary note in the timing models that I follow. But interestingly, that Q3 negative seasonality is not holding the market back so far. What's even more important, if we look at the presidential cycle pattern, that suggests that there should be some still downside risk into this last month of October before we actually get a very strong upswing.
So does there tend to be some seasonality around midterm elections then? Is it that people just stop trading into midterms, which affects some of the performance, and then come back and trade afterwards?
Well, yes, I think it's a little bit of an uncertainty hedge in terms of how things play out. But also, I think the pattern tends to get very positive into re-election season. So it's that massive upswing later on down the line. But I think for now, legislation is likely to be a little bit weaker post-mid-election, so that might get priced in at some point.
Now, one of the interesting developments of the last quarter is it was very noisy news-wise. We spent a lot of time talking about war, trade wars, geopolitical developments, but the volatility index, VIX, stayed at very, very low levels. So what are you thinking about the trajectory for volatility as an asset class from here?
Well, volatility has been an enigma for some time, up until Q1 flash crash of this year. So any kind of low volatility reads have been a good contrarian play. We look like we're actually within a compressed pattern now, similar to the one that we saw prior to the setup that I mentioned. It is at least looking like an attractive vol play on the short-dated side, potentially on things like Russell stocks and maybe small cap, and then a few other markets that are maybe not pricing in as much of the big moves that we've seen.
One of the big reasons that the U.S. stock market has done so well is the performance of the tech sector. We know that some of the blue chip stocks there, the FANG stocks, have helped propel the U.S. equities to new highs. But that has all started to change. We're beginning to see some of the big names come under pressure, whether it's regulatory scrutiny, whether it's antitrust issues, whatever it is. What are your charts telling you about the trajectory of FANG stocks, specifically the tech sector, from here onwards? Are we at peak euphoria in this segment?
We have been for some time. Timing is, of course, the bigger question in terms of at which point will we see some type of a healthy respite. I've just come back from a trip to Asia, and we just saw the BAT stocks there just cliff drop recently. Now, that's a China-specific story, but also a potential canary in the coal mine in terms of how we can get a fall from grace on some of these tech stocks for the reasons that you mentioned, but also just because they've become overcrowded and they're part of an also matured growth story, which I think is turning.